Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about betta fish, one of the most misunderstood and abused fish just in general. These fish are often thought of as either disposable or easy to take care of, something you give your kids to teach them a lesson, right? And these fish are amazing and they're just as deserving as having good conditions as any other fish. And in reality, they are easy fish to take care of compared to some more touchy species, but that doesn't mean we can put them in a cup that's this big and expect them to live. The truth is that as far as living conditions go, these fish are gonna need ideally a tank that's at least 5 gallons. The absolute smallest I would go with like a long fin betta would be maybe a 3.5 gallon. But at that point, you might as well get a 5, because for the most part, most companies are gonna have equipment and stuff that's tailored for having a 5 gallon. Compared to something where it's gonna be a lot harder to find equipment that's gonna fit into a 3.5 or a 2 gallon tank. So ultimately, buying a 5 is making it easier on you, and it's also a bigger water volume to allow the waste from your fish to dissolve into the water, which means that you're gonna be less of a slave to those water changes compared to if they're in a tiny cup that's gonna spoil pretty much instantly. So the main things you're going to need to keep this fish alive, bare minimum, is a tank of at least 5 gallons, heated water. So you're gonna want a heater that's probably set somewhere in between 78 and 80 degrees. I have my guy at 78 degrees right now. And you're gonna wanna make sure you get food that is of a proper recipe, because a lot of the fish food that's commonly fed to bettas contains plant matter, which they aren't able to digest. So for the most part, you're gonna wanna be able to get them something like fluval bug bites, which is made out of soldier fly larvae, or something like bloodworms, because they are naturally insectivores, which means that they're going to want to be eating insect-based diet, which they're made to digest. You're also going to need a filter. So I would recommend, for a cheap option, you're either gonna want something like a sponge filter, something low flow that isn't gonna be pushing around these fish, especially if you're getting something like a long fin betta, which is what most people go towards because that's the iconic betta look, right? You're gonna want something that's low flow because they aren't the best of swimmers. There's also an option like a hang-on back filter, and you can take a little piece of plastic like a water bottle or something, and you can put it right underneath the flow of the hang-on back filter just to disperse the water a little bit more so the betta doesn't get pushed around by that flow. Also, you're gonna wanna stay away from artificial decorations that have any sharp edges or places where the betta can get stuck, because their fins are very delicate. If you have anything sharp in there like those plastic plants, it's a very high possibility that they're going to end up tearing their fins, which can lead to infection and ultimately death. Alternatively, I recommend getting live plants. Some great options are anubias. They like some broad leaf plants because they like to rest on them sometimes. I also recommend something that can kind of float in the water and create lots of little hiding places, something like guppy grass or hornwort or elodia. They also, those fast growing stem plants also help to keep water quality pristine because they absorb your betta's waste. And when I say that, I don't mean a small amount of plants. I'll put up a picture of my tank just to show like what I mean. You're gonna want a tank that's mostly plant in order to keep those wastes down. That way, it really lowers the amount of maintenance you do. For the most part, your betta is still gonna enjoy those maybe monthly water changes, as long as everything's going good. I always recommend having a water testing kit to make sure things are going well. If you know absolutely nothing about fish keeping, you can go ahead and watch my my beginner's guide. It's the first video on my channel, so just go to the videos and hit oldest. It's like ultimate fish beginner guide or something. And then that's just gonna give you most of your general information. Something else I recommend for pretty much any betta tank is some kind of botanical. That's anything that releases tannin into the water. It could be certain types of driftwood, Indian almond leaves. There's like little seed pods and stuff. Normally you'll see them at like a Petco or PetSmart in a little box right next to where the bettas are. It'll say like betta botanical mix kit or something. I always recommend those because those help simulate an environment which is closer to the betta's natural environment, and those tannins also have some antibacterial and fungal properties, which also just helps maintain your fish's health. There are a couple of diseases that bettas are susceptible to. You can do your own research on that. But for the most part, the main one you're gonna look out for is fin rot. Sometimes if people have crown tail betta fish, they'll mistake the crown tail of the betta fish as fin rot, but that's just the morph of that fish. But you'll start seeing the fins rotting away, and it can progress very quickly and ultimately leave a fish that looks like a little worm. It will ultimately rot the fin pretty much all the way down to the base. So you're gonna wanna keep an eye out for that and get the appropriate medicine and keep that water clean. As far as water parameters go, these guys, betta splendens, the normal betta fish you see in a tank, not picky at all. There's a reason why these guys have a reputation for being hardy, and that's because they are. These are probably one of the most domesticated fish in the entire aquarium hobby. And so what that means is that they have been bred in captivity for so long that they can pretty much adapt to a wide range of conditions compared to something like a wild caught cichlid or something from South America that's like going to want acidic, warm water. When these betta fish have been in the aquarium hobby for, I don't know, probably like, I would have to imagine close to 100 years at this point, right? So you don't be chasing parameters for the most part with most fish, except for a touchy few. It's gonna be far more important to keep those parameters stable than it is going to be chasing parameters, because your betta fish is gonna be pretty much happy in any kind of condition outside of the extremes, like, I don't know, 8.8 pH or 5 pH, like pretty much like acid at that point. So for the most part, keep that water clean, give your betta a good diet, and make sure they're in an appropriately sized tank. As far as tank mates go, the classics are shrimp and snails. You just have to be aware that the betta fish's personality takes a huge role in the way you can keep with them. Like for example, keeping fish simple. He did an experiment where he kept a male and female betta in a big tank together, and it worked out. They didn't kill each other. But that is largely dependent on the personality. If you had a really brutal fish in that tank, it would have tore the other one to pieces. So you have to keep that in mind when you're putting shrimp or snails in a tank with a betta. There's a good chance they're just going to tear them to pieces, but that's just dependent on the fish's personality. You might have one that ignores shrimp, it doesn't even acknowledge their existence, and you might have one that goes around and picks them apart like the Terminator. So be aware of that. I would also avoid anything that looks similar to a betta, because that could potentially trigger them into have like a territorial dispute kind of thing. So I would avoid things with similar body shape and bright colors like bettas, guppies, platies, mollies. Anything with bright colors and long fins would probably be a bad idea, but it does work, and you see it sometimes. So once again, it's largely dependent on the personality of each fish. But as a general rule, to make things as easy as possible for yourself, I would just avoid those completely. I would recommend maybe some quarries if you have a big enough tank. Pygmy quarries would be a great choice. Maybe something like a neon tetra, ember tetra, micro resbora, something that's going to do well in a similarly sized, smaller to medium sized tank. Next, if I had to make some general suggestions apart from just the general care stuff, when you go to pick out your betta, if you're not one of those people that want to go and like save a betta and nurse them back to health, that's perfectly fine. If you just want to have the easiest experience possible, look for fish that are actively swimming, not sitting at the top or bottom. If you want a fish that's going to have a longer and healthier life, I would go for something like a plakat, short fin betta, or a female, because the longer fin males do unfortunately tend to pass away a little bit younger or experience some health issues later on in life because those fins are so heavy. They often experience, as they get older, their muscles deteriorate and they can't keep themselves upright, so they often spend a lot more of their time laying on plants and the substrate and stuff. Either way, it's ultimately up to you. They make great pets either way. They're very personable and very interactive when you come to feed them. They'll come right up to you and they'll be looking around. They're very inquisitive. Whenever you add anything new to the tank, they go up to it and look at it. They make absolute great wet pets. So if you did find any information in this video helpful, I would appreciate a like and a subscription. It really helps out a lot. Watching to the end's enough, honestly, but if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and go that extra mile for me. And with that, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.